And we're live, just like that. So, like I said, man, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is cool. The episodes that are jiu-jitsu related usually do pretty well because, as you know, jiu-jitsu is blowing up. And it's like, with all the influencers, your Jockos and your Rogans and everyone, Andy Stump pushing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, everybody's hungry for it now. So that's good for us, right? It's good for our business.
Yeah.
And, you know, we connected through a mutual friend of ours, Seth Farwell, who you were out at that the first Navy SEAL Fund one, right?
I was not at that.
Did you
one.
not? Okay,
I wasn't able to go to that one. I can't remember what I had that time. Maybe, but he set that up, and I wasn't able to go to that one.
Okay. Did we meet at the funeral then for the first time?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Or the memorial, but yeah.
Yeah. So I mean. And I'm sure if you got time, I'd love to get into that because Seth is one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And we were both jiu-jitsu black belts. But we never spent 1 minute on the mats together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never trained, you know. The one time that we trained together was that event. Remember, he just had his back fused or something crazy.
He during that time, there was a short span of time that he was getting a bunch of stuff done, either stem cells with Andy or getting his back repaired or his neck. He waited forever to get a bunch of that stuff done, like forever. Like I promoted him to purple belt and brown belt right out there on in that floor, and he had always been in pain.
Yeah,
always. Like his neck. I mean, he would carry around like icy hot and all this other crap just to try to relieve pain all the time, constantly. And I'm like, damn, dude, why don't you do something about that? And he finally did. And unfortunately, when he finally did something about it, it ended up being the thing that killed him. But
I know, man. And what's the chances of that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like life's crazy like that. He was a wild fucking dude, Navy SEAL. And I mean, I met him in Iraq. And we did
really?
Yeah, we did a bunch of deployments. We were both working for Triple Canopy, the contracting company.
I didn't realize you guys worked together with him.
And that's how I knew him. And I mean, neither one of us were into jiu-jitsu back then. We both got into it. I got into it in the contracting world.
Oh, okay.
Because a bunch of guys overseas used to train.
Yeah.
And that's
probably about the time that he got into it too, because I know he did a little bit, I think, in the Navy, just like fighting and shit like that.
Yeah.
But when it came to like organized jiu-jitsu, it was probably right around that time or right after that he really started kind of getting into it, I think.
Yeah. So we can come back to that, though. I just think the best way to open podcasts up, just give a little bit of background, who you are, what you're about, where we're at, and we just have fun with it, man. And I can talk as long as you fucking want to.
Yeah.
So feel free to kick me out.
We're currently in Houston, Texas. I'm retired from the Army. I retired in 2015. I recruited forever. I actually was in Fort Lewis. That was my first duty station. My daughter was born out there. I was there from 95 to 2000 across the airfield from you.
Okay.
I was on a tank, 133 Armor. And from there, I went to recruiting and then decided to stay in recruiting. And then 9/11 happened. I tried to go back and they couldn't. So I stayed in recruiting for a while, then got into special operations recruiting, and then moved down here and retired.
Got it.
And right before I retired, I was going to go back to Nashville because at Campbell's where I was doing special operations recruiting for the 160th.
Yeah.
And so once I came down here, my plan was to go back up there and become a cop in the Nashville area, but I had the opportunity to open up this place, and I decided to stay. I was married at the time. My ex-wife liked this area. She loved her job and the people that she was working with, so she asked, hey, I got no problem staying here if you want to stay here, so we decided to stay here. So
chasing jiu-jitsu instead of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Best thing you ever did.
Yeah. So many people have told me that, but on the other hand too, I do a ton of stuff with law enforcement here. Like I've got so many law enforcement officers that train here from multiple different agencies. I mean, there's just so much law enforcement in Houston. I mean, you've got constables, state, county, city. I mean, like all kinds of stuff down here. So there's a huge population of law enforcement down here, and we've got a ton of them that train here, and we're really kind of starting to do some unique things to it. I've got a black belt that's on the the east side or west side of the county SWAT team. They divide the SWAT team on east side and west side by the county.
Oh, okay.
And he's on one side of it, and he's going to be leading our cop only, LEO only jiu-jitsu program 2 times a week right now, free to any cop that wants to train,
Nice.
come in here.
So no excuses.
No, yeah, for free. Like, and they don't even have to buy a gi. They don't have to do anything. They can wear whatever they want to wear, learn tactics that are going to help them in their job and keep them safe and everyone else, and do that for free. And I've also got a 6-month free program here for those guys as well. It used to be a year, but honestly, I found that if they made it to 3 months, they would see the value in it.
Yeah, and they
would stay.
It's funny you say that because I always tell people that's my magic number. If you give jiu-jitsu 90 days of your life, you are going to buy off on it and you're going to see the value in it. Yeah. And I have yet to meet the person that committed to 3, 4, 5 months of jiu-jitsu and then regretted that.
Yeah, they're like, no, this is terrible.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Even if they don't stick with it, they got value out of it. Nobody ever regrets giving jiu-jitsu a try.
Exactly. And my thinking was, like, if they made it to 90 days, they could make it to 6 months. And even if they didn't want to sign up at that period, at least they would have 6 months of foundation, fundamental training underneath them that they could probably expand on a little bit. You know what I mean? But at least they would have that.
For sure.
So
it astonishes me that there are police officers out there that don't realize the value in learning to control another human being with your bare hands when our job is...
Gabe needs me right now. Okay, well,
do we make a pause? You're good? Okay. Yeah, so if you're only listening, we're sitting at Brian's Jiu-Jitsu Academy.
Tell Jenny.
And he has a kids class is about to start, so they're trying to call him out.
No, it's going on right now.
It's going on right now.
Gabe's out there kind of by himself.
But yeah, dude, like, to be a police officer, you know that you're going to be putting your hands on people on a daily basis.
You've got 100% opportunity to contact someone every single time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And to think that you don't need to be proficient at that is mind-blowing. But here's the other thing that I tell cops, because jiu-jitsu is so applicable to when you're on duty. There's so much benefit to knowing how to grapple. But one of the biggest benefits when I was a police officer training jiu-jitsu is coming to a place where I'm unplugging from the law enforcement community and being surrounded by other members of my community. Because like diversity on the mats, there is no one ethnicity, background, income level. Like jiu-jitsu appeals to a wide range of people across a broad spectrum. And as a cop, inevitably, you find yourself hanging out with cops all the time.
Right.
And when you're hanging out with cops, you're talking about the dude you arrested and the chief just fucked me and I didn't get the promotion. You take all that stress of work and then you find yourself interjecting it into your personal life.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Jiu-jitsu breaks that cycle.
Right. And the other thing that's good about, at least with law enforcement officers training, it does more than just being able to control somebody. You're able to start reading body language.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You could tell, like, okay, like, what do you want to do? Like, as a black belt, you can always tell when a blue belt, white belt, purple belt, like, all right, come on. Like, you can read it.
Yeah.
And the same thing with those guys, like, especially against an untrained person. Like, untrained people, like, telegraph things so much. You know what I mean? And cops, once they start training, they're like, it just becomes, like, almost comedic at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always tell people, trained versus untrained, it feels like you're putting your hands on a child.
Right, yeah.
You know? But, I mean, I've told this story on the podcast before, so people have to bear with me. But it's not only when you're going against, like, untrained people. I had a incident where a guy was clearly a meth addict, and he was tweaking, and when I contacted him, his ears were worse than mine.
Oh, yeah.
And they were all gnarled up, and I was like, he was looking at me, and he was giving all the pre-assault indicators, He was clenching his fists, and he was breathing hard, and I looked right at him. I said, bro, I see your ears. I see you're a fighter. I said, but I'm a fighter too.
Right.
So if you want to beat the fuck out of each other, we can do that. And I'm down with that. You hold the power to decide what happens next.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to be cool with you if you're cool with me. Or let's fucking throw down, dude, because I see you bouncing around like you want to. And he looks at me, and took it that kind of like...
Yeah.
He's like, man, I've never had a cop just shoot me straight like that.
Right.
And I was like, well, I don't want to fight you. I want to be cool. But if you want to fight me, I'm down. So it's wherever you want to go with this.
Right.
And... dude, then we started shooting the shit, and it was just a criminal trespass thing.
Right.
Not a bit. The whole point of contacting him was just to tell him, hey, you can't be here.
Right.
And so I have nothing to gain by fighting that guy, you know?
100%.
And Come to find out, he was a collegiate wrestler that moved to the Seattle area to pursue a career in MMA and got addicted to methamphetamine.
Damn.
And I told the other cops who were with me, I was like, you guys never fucking know.
Yeah.
Like that dude, you know what it's like to put your hands on a collegiate wrestler?
Oh, yeah.
I don't care if they have no jiu-jitsu. That can be a problem.
Oh, a huge problem.
Yeah, especially fighting on concrete.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Huge problem.
And so, having the awareness to be able to identify someone that is trained and recognize that in each other actually de-escalated
Right.
it, you know?
100%.
So this is pretty cool, man. Did you start training while you were in the Army?
I did. I was wrestling. I wrestled pretty much my whole life. When I graduated from high school, I was going to join the Marines, actually. But then I ended up getting a scholarship to wrestle, and the Marine recruiter was an asshole.
Uh-huh. Isn't that funny? You base your future off of one man.
But
because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a SEAL, and the Navy recruiter was just kind of a dipshit. So then I was like, I guess I'll go be a Ranger.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing was, like, I told this dude, I was living in Ohio, and his office was like 30 minutes from my house or high school. It wasn't in the same town. I ended up going to high school in this like 9,000 population town. So it was a tiny town in Ohio. And so I told him, I was like, hey man, I want to join, but I'm also significantly okay at wrestling. And if I get a scholarship, I'm going to go pursue that. I've got letters, like people are recruiting me, like, and if it pans out, I'm going to go that route. Yeah. But if it doesn't, 100% I'm going to join with you. And okay. Never came to any wrestling meets, never anything like that. And so when I got offered to go to Miami of Ohio, a Division I school, I signed the National 11-10. I was like, hey man, I ended up signing the National 11-10. I'm going to go. He cussed me up one side, down the other. I'm like, dude, I've been upfront and honest with you the entire time. I've driven to you every single time. You've never come to me. You don't know anything basically about me. I'm like, I'm good. And then when I dropped out of school, I'm like, well, I know I'm not going that route. Yeah. And so I ended up joining the Army. So you wrestled in college for a little bit then? For a little bit. Yeah. And I wrestled a little bit in the Army, but all like, you were at Lewis. So it was, Marcelo Alonso. No. They used to have, when were you at Lewis? 99 to 03. So you were there like right at the end of when I was there, but they used to have, wrestling meets on post right by the main parade field. There was I can't remember the name of the gym, but they would have wrestling meets there. And a couple of times a year to try to qualify for like the all-Army team and stuff like that. I never pursued to go do that, but man, if there was a wrestling meet that was there, of course I was doing it. Yeah. So then that happened. Then I got selected for recruiting, and then in recruiting, you're right into a civilian world. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're out of the military population into a civilian population. And so you're recruiting high school kids. I wrestled. What's the best thing to do? I started volunteering as an assistant high school wrestling coach. Oh, there you go. So I started doing that. Where were you doing that at? Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Okay. So I ended up going to Iowa. That was the first place I started recruiting in. So recruited in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Moved from Iowa to, where did I move to next? Springfield, Missouri. Started helping coaching down there. Moved up to, I was living on Fort Leavenworth, recruiting in St. Joseph, Missouri, stopped coaching wrestling and started doing jiu-jitsu because I was coaching wrestling. I wasn't really, so I went from Iowa to Missouri to another spot in Missouri and so it was like every time that I moved, it was like less good jiu-jitsu. I mean, wrestling. Yeah. And you went from like the pinnacle. I went from awesomeness to the opposite of awesomeness. Yeah. And trying to just instill fundamental wrestling techniques with people, like standard double legs, reversals, pinning combinations, and they all wanted to show like fancy, flashy, like cement mixers and all kinds of crazy nonsense. I'm like, your guy can't even stand up when the whistle is blown, like a basic stand up, can't do a sit out, can't do an inside sit, can't do anything, and yet you want to teach him some crazy 15-step move to try to get a pin or out of this position. How about you just teach him how to get hand control and stand up? Yeah. And so you see the same thing in jiu-jitsu too. Yeah, 100%. And I'm a big believer in high level fundamentals. Like, get really, really good at fundamental jiu-jitsu, and then if you get better at some other like fancy stuff, that's cool too. But like, you've got to have a like impenetrable fundamental base to base all of your other stuff off of. No, that's the same thing that I preach to my academy. It's like,
inevitably you're going to find your own jiu-jitsu. And if you want to be a Keenan Cornelius that every move you do takes 25 steps, cool, right? I mean, you find your jiu-jitsu. And I'm not saying that like pejoratively, because Keenan Cornelius is very good.
Right.
But I personally am more of the Roger Gracie mindset. That's like, get on top of you, get to mount or get to side control and find a finish.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And really hone the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. And I think that that's what will ultimately serve you better as a grappler. But also when I got into it, I wanted to be both a jiu-jitsu athlete and a fighter. And you know, when your technique is also being applied in MMA, it changes jiu-jitsu drastically, but you notice it changes it back to what you were saying, the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu.
So I got into it backwards. So I went from wrestling and I wanted to get back into competing, but I think I was like 30, maybe like 3 or something at the time. And for a 33-year-old, unless you're a exceptional international level wrestler, there's no wrestling for you.
Yeah.
And so the closest thing to wrestling is submission grappling or jiu-jitsu, because it's wrestling with submissions. It's like wrestling with extra fun stuff. Instead of, I just get to hold you down. Like, it's great that I hold you down.
But now I get to strangle you.
I get to strangle you while holding you down. So it's like, who wouldn't want to do that at that point? And so the only place that I could train at the time was a MMA school.
Okay. And
so I ended up training in this MMA school, and they're like, hey, you need to fight. I'm like, oh, I'm really not interested in fighting. I really just want to do submission grappling and jiu-jitsu. Well, I ended up fighting. Fought 8 times. And then I moved to a town that had regular Ghee jiu-jitsu or regular jiu-jitsu academy. And I had one last fight, stopped fighting at that point and just concentrate on jiu-jitsu, because punching someone in the face never really appealed to me, but man, strangling them, like, bro, I'm all about that.
I'm of the same mindset. And then also I started training hard at 22 years old. So still pretty young, but I mean, I was getting kicked and punched all the time, going home with headaches. You know, I'm 27 years old or whatever, and I'm like,
that's not good at all.
This doesn't make sense.
For the longevity of life.
And I'm not trying to get into the UFC. It was just something that I did for fun.
Right.
And I took a few fights and had some ups and downs, and I'm glad I did that. I think that's a good experience as a man and also as a martial artist.
Yeah, 100%.
But I always enjoyed the process of jiu-jitsu. I didn't enjoy the process of MMA.
Yeah.
And so it was like right before I got my brown belt, I'm like, I'm done with everything except jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And you know what's funny is I didn't even really know how to use my gi until I was a brown belt.
Oh, really? Because you were doing more Nogi and like MMA style fighting?
Yeah. And like all my submissions would be like head and arms and rear naked chokes and things that would work back and forth.
Right.
But I learned, that's actually when I moved to California and joined Checkmat. And these young kids down there that were just like wizards in the gi, doing things, berimbolo and stuff, things I'd never even heard of.
Right.
And that's like, okay, I need to really invest in gi jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And now I prefer gi jiu-jitsu.
You know what always used to crack me up, because when I was up at Campbell, I taught it at fifth group jiu-jitsu every time that I was in town there. And you talk about gi versus no gi. People talk about all the time, well, gi is not realistic. It's more, Nogi is more realistic.
No.
I'm like, really? I'm like, how often are you fighting naked people? Like, so you can't grab their clothes? You're not allowed to grab their clothes?
Dude, like what you're wearing right now.
Yeah.
All of that is applicable in a fight.
100%.
Yeah.
So for someone to tell me that gi is not relevant and no gi is like better for you in self-defense or any aspect at all, like, I don't think one's better than the other, but to have that discussion, like my philosophy is jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's the application of it, how you want to apply it. You want to get a grip or make a grip, whatever it is, but jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu. But to say like for a self-defense situation, no-gi is better. I was like, no. Like learning how to wrap someone up in their clothes, like unless you're fighting naked people everywhere you go, like you're going to want to have some clothes and how to use them.
I tell my students all the time, I'm like, we live in Seattle. It's raining 9 months out of the year.
Yeah.
People have fucking coats on.
Yeah, for real.
You know? And so what initially got you, I mean, you kind of unpacked it a little bit, just looking for a continuation of grappling, but what was like your first experience with jiu-jitsu?
Did
you ever have that like aha moment where it's like, oh fuck, I need to do this?
I don't know if it was like, oh fuck, I need to do this, but I mean, it was pretty close because I had that like want and desire to want to do more than what I was currently doing physically. And I was kind of bored with just coaching. And I was like, man, I still can and want to be able to do more and compete with something in this. And then one of the guys that I was working with was training at that MMA gym that I ended up joining. He's like, hey, one of my guys is getting ready for a fight with a wrestler. Can you come down and work on some takedown defense with him? And I'm like, sure. So I went down there and had fun. And I'm like, well, this is just like wrestling, just a different rule set. And so it wasn't for like a straight up aha moment, but it was like, all right, this is more like what I want to be doing. And then I guess the real aha moment came in jiu-jitsu when I found all the auxiliary benefits that came with it.
Yeah.
Like, man, my brain is chill right now. I'm not super stressed out about things. Like I think that's when really the kind of aha moment came in when you realize, man, this physical stuff is great. And I'm a aggressive kind of person anyway. And I like to work out and I like to do these things, but they don't ever think about all the back end stuff that goes along with all those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
no, I tell my students all the time, I said, 10% of what you're going to take from these mats has to do with fighting another human being.
Yeah.
The other 90% is you're going to deal with
fighting you.
Anxiety better. Yeah, right. You're going to learn how to be uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations. You're going to learn how to adapt and overcome. You're going to learn how to problem solve under pressure.
100%.
All these different things. And dude, and I know that people that don't train think we're like a cult, right? But it's like, dude, your professional life will be better.
Yeah.
You're going to have better relationships with your significant other. You're going to be a better father. And it goes on and
there's
on.
no single thing that can improve a person's life in all aspects other than jiu-jitsu. Because, I mean, it's not really, I think you kind of hit it like really well there. It's like only like 10% of it is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
The other 90% of it is the stuff that the art itself forces you to have to be able to do. It forces you to gain confidence. Like you don't have an option.
Yeah.
You're going to become confident or you're going to quit. That's one thing or the other.
Yeah.
So if you stay in jiu-jitsu, your confidence is just going to continue to grow. I've seen professionals that literally their life's changed being in here. They come in here and they're timid and they're a worker and they're like, oh yeah, I go to my job. Then the next thing you know, they're like, oh yeah, I just got a promotion. I'm like, into this role. I'm doing this now. I'm like, man, because you exude confidence.
Yeah, people see that. Yeah. And they're going to get promoted.
And they want that type of leadership and enthusiasm. They don't want a person that's going to be like, oh yeah, I guess we can do this today. What do you guys think? I'm not sure if I can make a decision right now. But when you get a confident person, they're like, yeah, I've assessed what's happening, or the ability to deal with the stressful environment and make decisions on the fly under a stressful situation. That's what you get every single day out there on those mats.
Yeah.
So,
and then another side of it is like just the social aspect of it, especially over the last 2 years. I don't know how bad the pandemic hit Texas, but we're still not supposed to be doing jiu-jitsu in Seattle.
Yeah.
And it's like people need to be around other people. They need class ends at 7:30. Like the clock stops at 7:30. We're done doing our rounds. Very rarely do I lock the door before 8:30.
Yeah.
It's an hour of, we're cleaning up and taking care of some stuff. But you see groups of people all over the mats talking about their day, bouncing ideas off of each other. And dude, we're tribal creatures. We need that.
100%.
And it's been lost in our society.
Yeah, that's why I just thought it was insane that you would go to separate people from each other instead of let people congregate with each other, you know?
Yeah. No, it's nuts, man. That first academy that you did some MMA at, was there any Ghee stuff going on?
No, none. There wasn't even any ranks or anything. It was just straight up. He eventually opened up. Jeremy Horton's the guy's name that I first started training under. He ended up in that academy was called MMA school was called Lone Wolf MMA in St. Joseph, Missouri. He ended up opening, and he currently runs 10th Planet Kansas City.
Okay.
So that's what he was always. When we were training with him, he was always like a big Eddie Bravo guy with rubber guard and stuff like that. But we were using the straight blast gym kind of like system. He really liked those guys, so he was teaching us a lot of that stuff. But then when I left later on down the line, he ended up going and becoming with Eddie Bravo and turning it into 10th Planet Kansas City. So,
okay.
Yeah, he's still up there teaching and doing great things. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
When did you make the switch to Ghee Jiu-Jitsu?
I moved to Wichita, Kansas, and I started training under a Tazi black belt named Marcio Lasava. And that was in 2006, maybe.
Okay.
2005, the end of 2005, beginning of 2006, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any like transition period where, because I know a lot of wrestlers, the Ghee is always kind of like, oh no.
Not really. I just continued to do like Nogi stuff.
Yeah.
Because I am a big believer in using something that works both sides. So most of the stuff that I teach tends to have dual applications. And if I teach something, I'll show, hey, this is how you can grip with clothing and this is how you can grip with the human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So using natural gripping points. So I think I got away with life a little bit doing that initially until I figured out how to use the Ghee. And then because I was triangling people with my legs a lot, like doing leg triangles, to the point where they're like, hey, you gotta stop doing that. You gotta figure out something else to do. And I'm like, well, I don't really know a lot of other things. I mean,
dude, you're a wrestler,
right?
You're a high level wrestler that's triangling everybody. I don't see a problem with that.
Right. I love the Darce. I love the Darce when I'm on top, and then the triangle when I was on bottom. And so that's the two main things that I would go through. And I'm a white belt at this time, so I'm like, jiu-jitsu, submission, just keep doing that one. This one's working. They haven't stopped yet. Keep doing that until I ended up finding that when they said, they're like, hey, you can't do that. You can't do that one anymore. You have to figure out something else. And then it even got to the point where I would roll somebody and they'd be like, did Brian submit me? Yeah, but it was with a triangle.
And it doesn't.
And I'd be like, that's bad.
Dude, we had a high level wrestler named Otto Olson came out of the Seattle area, and phenomenal wrestler. And I believe it was Charlie Pearson, who's an MMA coach, showed him the Darce. So now you have this elite wrestler with one submission.
Yeah.
And he took that all the way to 80cc.
And
that's it.
And that's a good one, too.
Dude, and if Otto comes to practice and you slap and bump with him, you're going to get taken down to Darce.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually think that that's almost better when you know what someone's going to do to you and you can't stop it.
Yeah.
Think how fucking good they have to be at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
And so like, hey, if this guy's going to triangle you, I'm not going to say don't triangle me.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out a way to not
get
let
out
you
of
to triangle.
Yeah.
You know?
But it made me develop other stuff, which was kind of good because I ended up finding this choke that I turned it into this stupid choke that I do and ended up doing a BJJ Fanatics on it. So it ended up working out. It ended up working out for the best anyway. So
I mean, you were still active duty recruiting then.
Oh yeah.
You found yourself bouncing around to lots of different gyms then throughout your progression, or
kind of really not though, because when I started in recruiting, I was one spot for like 2 years and I was another spot for like 2 years. My shortest time was actually when I was in Wichita. I was only there literally 1 year.
Okay.
No. I was there two and a half years. I was only in Albuquerque with Tusa for a year.
Got it.
But every other spot was a little bit longer period of time. Like
he has a good academy down there,
man,
right?
Phenomenal people. And I was down there when it was only one. Now there's like 4 or something like that down there. But I was down there when it was just the one on San Pedro, and that's like their main one now. But that was only 1 year, but every other one had been like 2.5 years. So I didn't bounce too many. 1, 2, 3. Basically 3 before I got to Campbell. And then when I got to Campbell, I was a brown belt. And so...
Okay, that was my next question. Like, if you're giving them 2 years, you're probably getting like one promotion per academy.
Yeah, basically.
Because, I mean, there's so many guys that are in the military or just life takes them around and they never get promoted because they're a white belt. I had one that just promoted him as a white belt for 8 years.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of that. When I was at Campbell, I went through combatives level 4, and I would get in relationships with, not like relationships, but with like friends, become friends with the instructors and stuff, because as I'm going through level 1 as a brown belt, they're going to be like, hey, I know we're teaching you level 1, but can you teach us like some jujitsu? Like we want to train too. You know what I mean? Those guys want to train. And so if you have the ability to train with them, like they want to train with you. So you become friends.
Yep.
And so level 1, level 2, level 3, like all of those, everybody's like friends. So I got guys that are instructing me how to do certain things. I'm like, what belt do you? We'll roll. They're like, oh, I'm just a white belt. I'm like, what? And I'm like, no, man, we're going to get you caught up.
Yeah.
And so like later on down the line, they would come to teach another class, and I would promote them, or, because they didn't have they were under like one combative system, and they trained everywhere, but they never trained one spot. And those guys been training 6, 7, 8 years, just like you said, white belt, never been promoted. It's like, no, man, we're not doing that anymore. And like, if they ask who you got promoted, sell them me.
Yeah,
if they got a question, come see me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it was great at Campbell, being able to teach there and do stuff over there with those guys. So
that's cool. You got hooked up recruiting for 160th, huh?
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I was trying to get to special operations recruiting forever because I hated traditional recruiting.
What's the difference in, because I mean, when I went in the military, I don't know if there was. Are they drawing from other active duty? Is that how it works?
It's in-service recruiting.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't doing out-of-service recruiting at that point. I was doing in-service recruiting.
Okay.
So I actually got to deploy with the 160th 6 times.
Nice.
So 2 times to Iraq, 4 times to Afghanistan, traveling all over the country, recruiting pilots that were there, because you got to figure we're in war for 20 years.
Yeah.
At that period of time, 2008 to 2012, we're fighting 2 wars. Mm-hmm. Well, 2008 to 2010, basically we were fighting 2 wars. Then 2010 to 2012, it transitioned to Afghanistan, like where I would go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so being able to bounce around, and they would be there for 12 to 15 months. So I would go over there and see them and be like, hey, man, when you come back, like, you want to be over here 12, 15 months, or you want to do
3 months,
30, 60-day deployments?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be gone almost the same amount of time, but bouncing back and forth with the highest level of professionalism that you can deal with.
Yeah.
Like, what environment do you want to work in? And so talking with them and bouncing back and forth, like, just got to do a lot with them.
That's cool, man. Yeah, when I left the regiment, actually, I went contracted for a while, and then that was on my break in service. I went back in with the Army Flight School program.
Oh, really?
And was down in Rucker, and I was slotted to fly 47s and actually hemorrhaged my retina at a CrossFit workout.
Really?
And they said, hey, eye injury in flight school, that's a disqualifier. You're out of here.
Wow.
But while I was in flight school, some of the cadre they were previously 160th pilots.
Oh, yeah.
And they told me, they said, because you came from the regiment,
yeah.
we're interested in recruiting you right out of flight school. Yep. They said that way you're not going to the 101st or whatever.
Yeah. Because you understand the mission set a little bit. Yeah.
Developing SOPs that are different than what they want.
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck, man, that might be the path that I go.
Yeah.
But
those were the main ones that they would get out of flight school. They're really, really lower hours, were guys with previous SOF experience.
Uh-huh.
Unless they were just a stud, but generally it's like previous SOF guys.
And so that's when I was like, fuck, man, that was supposed to be my life.
Especially with the 47.
But then how many fucking 47s went down in the mountains?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I have to tell myself, who knows, maybe there was a high tension wire with my name on it somewhere, you know?
That's true.
Yeah, 160th. I mean, all the special operations units, they got put through the ringer for those years, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Grinder.
Fucking extortion and all that stuff. Man, dude. So then how did you end up getting hooked up with Renzo?
So how I ended up getting hooked up with Renzo was when I moved from Wichita to Albuquerque, I started training with Tucson, the Gracie Baja team.
Okay.
When I moved from Albuquerque to Tennessee, I stayed training under the Gracie Baja team. Samuel Braga would come over. I would train with him a bunch. He was thinking about starting an academy in Nashville, so I was training a bunch with him. There really wasn't an affiliation with the 5th Group gym that we trained at, so it really didn't matter what I was.
Yeah.
And then I ended up starting a jiu-jitsu club in town in Clarksville, and we called it Clarksville Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy, which later became a Gracie Baja, which later is now Renzo Gracie Clarksville.
Okay.
So anyway, back to the story. I moved down here. There's Draculino's down here. And so when I moved, I got too senior for my position in Tennessee, and they're like, you got to move. I said, okay, no problem. They're like, where you want to go? I was like, I don't know what's available. And they said, you want to go to Southern California? I said, no. Although Southern California is beautiful, I'm like, man, I don't want to deal with that expensive nonsense in California. And I was like, no, I don't want to go there. And they said, all right, call me back. I mean, you know how assignments go.
Yeah.
And so I called them back, and they're like, you want to go to Houston? I was like, yeah. And they're like, you don't need to ask anybody. You know what I mean? You're like, you don't need to ask or make sure that it's okay. I'm like, no, man, I'm good. Because at that time, all my moves were based on jiu-jitsu. I knew I was getting ready close to be retirement. I wanted to go someplace where other good jiu-jitsu was. I knew Drac was down here. I knew my buddy Piano was down here that I was friends with at the time in GB. So I moved down here.
And you already had in mind eventually opening an academy?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
And what's funny is when I moved to Tennessee, I didn't want to teach at all. I was an athlete. I was a competitor. Remember, I got into it to get back into competing. I didn't get into it to go to coach. I got into it so I could compete. So when I moved to Tennessee, I was a brown belt, just got promoted to brown belt by Tusa. I was a competitor at basically all the competitions that I could do. I moved there, and they're like, hey, well, we don't have anybody that can teach here. Can you teach? And so then I did. And this was at this off-post place. But then most of my training was on-post. And so I moved down to Houston, started teaching and training at Gracie Baja in West Chase, and then it came time for me to retire. I was going to go back to Tennessee. And then the thing with, I got some investors at family, mom and husband and wife, mom and dad, husband and wife, that were like, hey, if you ever want to, I taught their son jiu-jitsu, and they said, if you ever want to open up your own place, like, we'd be interested in investing in you if you wanted to do that.
Oh, nice.
And so I was like, well, I mean, I never thought about opening up my own place, but I mean, I love teaching. I mean, I love competing, but I love teaching, and I was going to go back and be a cop. Like, I can always be a cop. Like, let's try the jiu-jitsu thing. I'm like, I was pretty proficient at it, I thought, so I ended up opening this place as Gracie Baja.
So this facility we're at now, this was the first place you opened, huh?
Yep, this one right here.
And what year was that?
That was in 2014 is when I opened, about 6 months before I retired.
Okay.
And so then I retired, and this was a Gracie Baja for a while, and then I was asked to Gracie Baja, I guess I don't need to beat around the bush too much. Gracie Baja is a franchise, and they require certain things to happen. It's not like I was not wanting to do them, but I like to operate in my own way.
Yeah, I totally understand. You should have autonomy over your own business.
Basically, I wanted to have the ability to assess my students at any time and formulate a training plan for them based on their needs that I'm observing firsthand.
Yep.
And not have to be told what I need to teach when I need to teach them. Now
that's right, because it's a disseminated curriculum too. Is that correct?
And it's not necessarily bad. I mean, they've got a great curriculum, and they've got a great program, and they've got a lot of great academies and instructors and people everywhere, but it just didn't fit for my style.
Yeah.
And
I agree with that, because I hear people say like Gracie Baja, a lot of people say, oh, it's like a Mick Dojo, and it's like, well, the Gracie Bajas that I know, the guys are fucking very good at jiu-jitsu. The Seattle Gracie Baja is owned by a friend of mine, Rodrigo Lopez.
Yep.
Savage.
Yeah.
And
I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that McDojo thing got back in the day when they had blue belts and purple belts running in academies. I think that's when the kind of McDojo thing got brought up, but I think they really put a squash to that when they became a franchise, because there were so many loose affiliations that people were kind of, I'm a blue belt and I teach, and then they're like, man, how you get a blue belt teach? Well, his instructors,
like Greg Lappin.
I'm like that guy, but you know, and they'd be like, well, I met this guy in Miami or Fort Lauderdale or whatever, and he's my instructor, and I go see him every once in a while and come back. Well, that's what was around at that time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? There wasn't the level of jiu-jitsu that there is now, so people that were haters on him be like, you got a blue belt teaching. It's like, that's the only fucking thing I got, man.
Yeah.
Like, and so that kind of McDojo thing, it may have been watered down a little bit, but I think they really put a squash to that once they tightened up their affiliations and really kind of became a franchise. It stopped all these loose affiliations and people being like, well, I'm on this team, but I really don't do anything, and having no standards and anything like that. So they revamped that in a big way and got to a really, really good program. But like I said, it just didn't really, the whole of it didn't fit me.
Yeah.
And I was the president of the We Defy Foundation at the time, and I had an objective to try to get 2 big names in to become certified training facilities on the East Coast and the West Coast. I wanted some legitimacy with our program. I mean, it's a super legitimate program, but you've got a bunch of academies that support it, but not really. At that time, we didn't really have a big name.
Yeah.
And so my objective was on the East Coast, Renzo. Like, if I could get Renzo to support what we were trying to do with veterans in jiu-jitsu, like, he wouldn't support something that was bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then on the West Coast, I was trying with AOJ, and I was trying with the University of Jiu-Jitsu. Salo and Sanji, and I was trying with Andre Gaval. Mm-hmm. And so we were working on that thing on the West Coast, working on this thing on the East Coast. And finally, after getting everything worked out with Renzo, I said, hey, look, we want to come present you with the certificate and the banner for your academy. Tell me any day, because that dude's like, that dude moves more than the president.
Oh, like, yeah, he's busy.
Literally, like, it's like, where's Renzo? If you ever look at his Instagram story, it's like, where is he today? On this planet, there, like, he could be anywhere. And so anyway, I said, look, you tell me the day and I'll be there. I don't care what day it is, what day of the week, what time it is. You tell me what class that I can do this to you, and I'll be there. And he's like, Tuesday. I was like, and this was like on a Thursday or Friday. I called Joey Bosick, who's a AAA amputee. He was a founder of the We Defy Foundation with Alan Shabaro. And I was like, dude, I'm booking us a flight. We're going to New York City, and we're presenting this to Renzo on Tuesday. He's like, let's go.
Nice.
And so we presented him to him, and I took the standard picture outside of the academy, and all of my students back here, because like we just talked about, like, most people told me I was the least Gracie Baja person that they ever knew. As soon as I took that picture, like, I had like probably 7 messages like, dude, are we changing? And I'm like, no, man, no, we're not. We're not changing at all. And they're like, well, why are you there? I'm like, it's with the We Defy Foundation, man. It's chill. And so anyway, I came back from that trip, and like literally like 2 weeks later, Draculino was like, hey, Brian, I need to talk to you. Like, we got some serious like business stuff we need to talk about. And I said, no problem. I went and talked to him, and just the conversations that I had had with Renzo along the way and getting it set up. I was sitting on the bench in the basement next to Renzo, right outside the men's locker room. And John Danaher was teaching a class. He taught the Nogi technique to like 40 people, put on a Ghee top, taught the Ghee version of that technique to another 40 people. Took the Ghee top off. Gary Tonin and Jake Shields were there with MMA gloves and taught the MMA application of that technique. I looked at Renzo and I was like, you know what? That's what fucking jiu-jitsu is about. It doesn't matter if it's Ghee, no Ghee, MMA, it's fucking jiu-jitsu. It's the application of jiu-jitsu. And Renzo and I really kind of talked a little bit, had a connection there. And when Draculino was like, hey man, like, you got to do something like this or you got to do something else. And I was like, well, like, man, that mindset is like exactly what I like. Sharing jiu-jitsu. It doesn't matter if it's Ghee, no Ghee, MMA, like, let's do jiu-jitsu. And so I reached out to Renzo and I said, hey, like, you can talk to Drac. I know you guys are like best friends. Like, there's no drama. Like, I try to live my life drama free. I said, there's no drama, but I'm gonna leave Gracie Baja, and I'd love to be able to join your team. He's like, let's do it, brother. Nice. It's like right off the bat. And I was like, all right, let me talk to, and this is gonna segue into something for you. And eventually talked to Drac, and I was like, hey, Drac, I'm gonna join Renzo's team. He's like, yeah, I figured you would probably do that. I talked to Renzo. Good luck, man. And Drac and I still have a really good relationship. I talk to him often, and every time I see him, like, I still have a good relationship with all those people. It just wasn't for me, you know?
Yeah.
But my actual first academy. So at that time, Seth had already moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And he told me, hey, when we get everything set up here with gin and everything like that, I want to open up my own place. I said, no problem, man. Whenever you're ready, let me know and I'll help you. So he moved up there, and we were getting things rolling. And
he was brown when he left here? Is that right?
He was brown when he left here. And Jordan was going to move up with him.
Oh, Jordan was from down here, huh?
No. No.
I'm trying to put all the pieces together.
Yeah. So Jordan, let's back up a little bit more. Jordan, I met in Fort Drum, New York. He was teaching at, I think it was a BJJ United facility. The Magalese brothers, I think, are the ones that promoted him to black belt. But he was teaching at an academy there. I was recruiting for the 160th, went to Fort Drum to do a brief. Sidebar on this. I was on a plane that crash landed into the Watertown airport. No bullshit. I'll tell you the stories another time. But anyway, I go and I meet Jordan Damon at this academy, and we train and teach, and I think nothing of it. I meet Seth years later at GB West Chase, and then when I opened this place, he comes trains over here, and he's like, I got this buddy that's a jiu-jitsu savant that I want to move down here, and you need to hire him. I'm like, well, I don't need to hire anybody, but I'm like, if you got a buddy that needs some help, like, bring him down here and he can work for me and we'll make it work out. So Jordan moved down here, was living with Seth and working for me for a while. And Jordan hates structure. And at that time I was Gracie Baja. So I was like the most structured that I could ever be in my life.
Yeah.
And so when Seth moved up there, Jordan ended up moving up with him. And so anyway, it got to the point where, or maybe Seth moved up. No, they would have had to move together because Jordan wouldn't have lived here by himself.
I think Jordan was in Seth's barn from day one.
Yeah, so it had to have been they moved up there at the same time because I don't think Jordan would have stayed down here without Seth. And so anyway, they're up there, and Seth finally goes, Brian, I want to start my own place. So we started working it, and remember, I was Gracie Baja at the time, so they sent him the franchise documents to get everything set up with it. And I said, Seth, yeah, like literally it's like days with conversations between here, the conversation with leaving, there, the conversation was starting that business and that franchise up there. So Seth's got the paperwork and he's like, Brian, I've already told him that the Gracies are coming. Don't fuck me. You're going to make me look like a fucking idiot. I'm like, Seth, you're going to be fine. He's like, you don't understand. I've already told him the Gracies are coming. I'm like,
Gracies are still coming.
I know. I'm like, Seth, I was like, and I couldn't tell him what was going on at the time.
I could totally
because fucking Seth,
that.
He'll go fucking crazy at that point. And I said, Seth, just trust me, just for a couple of days. Just trust me. I'm working something right now. I just need a little time. What is it? I can't tell you. I was like, just trust me. And so I'm like, I can't remember that. I always say it's like a Tuesday because I could swear to God it was like on the next day, Wednesday, like I don't know why, but Wednesday he was going to open an academy. Brian, I'm getting assigned. I'm opening. I need to know what I'm going to sign the paperwork. And I'm like, give me a second. So I messaged Renzo and I was like, hey, I want to open an academy. He had already told me that I was going to join the team, and I'd already told him that I was going to bring 3 academies with me when I changed. And so I messaged him, and I was like, Renzo, I'm trying to open an academy tomorrow in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I would like to open it as Renzo Gracie Coeur d'Alene. Do I have your permission? He said, yes, brother, go for it. And so I took a screenshot of that. I sent it to Seth, and he's like, fucking Renzo. I'm like, yeah. He's like, Jordan's so happy. I'm like, yeah, I bet Jordan's so fucking happy. So that's how Seth and that academy was my actually first Renzo.
Okay.
Because that one changed first. Then this one changed, and then my one in Clarksville changed.
Got it.
Yeah.
Where's Clarksville at?
Just north of Nashville. Fort Campbell.
Got it.
Campbell, yeah.
Yeah, man, that whole deal made me sad after Seth passed. I was like, just wanting his academy to live on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And we tried so hard. I mean, I don't want to tell you about all the fucking drama.
I mean, me and Jen are kind of close, so I got the inside scoop on a lot of it. And it's like
it's insane.
It sucked, man.
But I mean, we tried, but you can't deal with some factors that are just trying to make you fail.
Well, and the other side of it is an academy needs leadership.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the right person being the face of the business.
Yeah. I mean, it was tough. Like it was heartbreaking for me. Every time I went up there, it was like a little bit more of his spirit was gone.
Yeah.
Like the room was just a little bit more deflated, And until like the last time I was up there, I was like, Seth's fucking dead.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the fucking spirit of him and the memory of him is fucking gone in this place.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jen and I decided to close it, and it was probably for the best. They continue jiu-jitsu up there. Leo's doing a great job with those guys. He came in and taught, and I was trying to get him to take it over, and he was apprehensive about it. And I think he thought that I wouldn't do it, that we wouldn't close it. But it just had to be done. We couldn't continue to let that happen. You know what I mean? It wasn't what it was.
Yeah.
And we had to stop it.
Well, what did, from just a pure business standpoint, when you first opened this facility, how long would you say like it took you to kind of iron out the growing pains and the kinks? And
man, it was rough because I've got a high school education, but the good thing is I operated in recruiting for a long time. So that aspect of it, not the marketing and that part of it, but the overall everything, logistics and working on budgets and things like that. Really, the recruiting aspect of that was my education for it. Because
you were good at getting bodies in the door then, huh?
Well, not necessarily bodies in the door, but when they came in and they experienced a class, they didn't want to leave.
I see. Yeah.
And so we didn't put a huge emphasis on, because I was retired. This was my only income. We had to make this happen as little expenses as possible. Mm-hmm. And so, I was working a couple different jobs as a bouncer, trying to get as much money as I could at the time. And then right shortly after I opened this place and then retired, I ended up getting divorced. I mean, it was a rough first couple of years with this place, like building it and developing into what it is. I mean, I've slept in this thing so many times I can't even think about it. You know what I mean?
I tell people all the time, like, I don't know how most academies make it, because the first couple of years,
it's tough.
It's just a money pit.
Yeah.
Going in debt. And I mean, I was fortunate enough that I built my academy on a piece of property that I own. But I was also working as a police officer full time. So I wasn't
and that's a tough thing to do.
And I realized that it wasn't up until I left the police department 2 years ago. Boom.
Yeah.
Because once you start putting
focus,
all of your focus and energy, the energy in the gym shifts.
Yeah.
And people see it for what it is. And I wish, I could have, should have, would have. If I would have known that earlier, that place could have been extremely successful earlier. But trying to juggle too many things, everything's just kind of mediocre.
The thing about it is, you've got what in your mind you think your priorities are. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In your mind, you think, I need to be a police officer. I need to be doing this. I mean, I want to be doing that too, and that's got a priority. But in my mind, I think I need to be doing these things. You know what I mean? And I think that's where, like, you get torn. Which way do you go? And then you always have hindsight, you know what I mean? Like, if I would have known that now, but what if it would have been opposite, you know what I mean? What if the law enforcement career would have taken off and you would have done something and still done something with jiu-jitsu, but you would have had an impact that way that you do this way, you know what I mean? Then you would have been like, well, man, I'm glad I didn't do that, you know what I mean? Then your hindsight would have been the opposite.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
It is what you put your energy into and what you want to focus on, man. It'll do great things. And you get an awesome area up there too.
Man, and it's... my listeners are probably sick of hearing me talk about this, because it's like, I'm still in awe with what's happened with my Jiu-Jitsu Academy over the last 20 months. And there's a bunch of reasons, like my story went viral, so I got some more eyes on me for that. And then also like defying the pandemic, that brought a lot of people in too. Because I had a lot of parents that they would call me and they'd be like, are you enforcing the mask mandate? And at first I thought it was like, dude, this might be labor and industry doing a sting on me, But then I was like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to be authentic.
Right.
And if it's the government trying to come after me, then they can fucking come after me. So when people would call, I'd say, no. I said, first of all, anyone that understands jiu-jitsu knows that you can't do it with a mask on.
Right.
All right. So with that out of the way, I also think that it's important for our children, because all the schools were closed for the whole year.
Yeah.
And the kids need an outlet. They also need socialization. And so I decided we're going to open up because A, your business can't survive for a year without customers, but B, the community needs it.
Yeah, 100%.
And we have CrossFit and Jiu Jitsu. And my buddy runs the CrossFit downstairs. I run the jiu-jitsu upstairs. And we both talked and we said, we're fucking opening with zero restrictions. And if people feel comfortable coming and training, that's a decision that them and their family make.
Yeah, 100%.
That's not a decision for the government to make.
100%.
And because we were the only show in town, we both blew up. And it was fucking incredible to see. But what I've noticed is growth is exponential if you're putting out a good product, right? So, we went from 15 or 20 students. It was just like a hobby club with a group of guys that we grinded every night, right. And then, we're at like almost 170 now, and we're having to expand.
Right.
And it's kind of stressful because if you look at like the mats sometimes, like the old school pictures from Brazil where like you couldn't fit one more person on the mat. Some nights it feels like that. And it's like, man, do I stop allowing new people to, like, do I cap my membership? Or do I just realize like, hey, this is a good problem to have, so I just need to come up with a solution to it, But
it's a good problem to have, though.
Yeah. And so what we're doing is we're building another facility on the property.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm posting about that. Yeah.
And so, but permits and builders and contractors and wetland assessments and all that shit.
It's nothing but wetland out there.
Yeah, I know. So it might be a fucking year out still.
Yeah.
But it's cool, like, to watch once I've invested into it and I've really put my heart and soul to it. People are happy with with the product they're receiving. And now it's just every week, like it feels like more and more people are starting to buy off on jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And if you got somebody there that can have a professional technical product and not be an asshole or egomaniac about it, then it's going to do good things for you.
And I try and take all the ego out of my jiu-jitsu. Not out of my jiu-jitsu. I always actually tell my students, like when they say, hey, leave your ego at the door, I'm like, well, you're trying to strangle another grown man.
Right.
That's an ego-driven activity, right? So you have to have the balance of your ego, But I think at my academy, I want people to walk upstairs and feel a level of comfort and feel a level of like, we're inviting you to come and train with us. Because I came from... the checkmat black belts down in California, they're a bunch of monsters.
Right.
And I would go train with those guys, and it's basically Fight Club, And Joe Assis, that's who I got my black belt from. He was running his academy like Fight Club too, but it was never paying the bills.
Right.
And I remember we were driving back from Coeur d'Alene when we went out there with Bouchesha and Joao, and he's like, man, I need to kind of revamp how I market jiu-jitsu to people because I got a bunch of tough fighters. He goes, but your toughest fighters are your worst customers.
Right.
And he goes, and I'm not looking to sell a watered down version of jiu-jitsu, but we have to create an environment where other people feels welcome.
Right.
And really, really live by that jiu-jitsu is for everybody model.
Right.
And we both kind of shifted our focus, and it's been fucking awesome, man. But one thing that I try and do in my academy is the jiu-jitsu community is small, and the Brazilians, and Joao will agree with me, like there's a lot that they're always some kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a tiff or drama between them,
That's true.
He went and trained with him. He's a fucking creonche, all that, And so when I opened my academy, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and stay as far away from all that stuff as possible. And I had one member that's like, hey, I can only make it to your academy on Mondays and Wednesdays, but my schedule allows me to train at another academy on like Thursday. Is it cool if I have a membership there? I said, bro, you're a grown-ass man.
Yeah.
You spend your money and your time wherever you want.
Yeah.
And if you like to spend Monday and Wednesday with me and this team, that's awesome.
You're right.
And on Thursday,
if it's more convenient, you go over there.
Yeah, it's like you do you know? And then I also tell people like, and maybe it's because I'm a good coach, so I'm a shitty businessman, because people will be like, and it's kind of bizarre, but when people are like looking for different jiu-jitsu academies, sometimes at my academy, when they're doing like a trial, they'll ask like, hey, well, do you know anything about this academy or that academy? And I tell them, dude, they're good guys. Go check them out. Yeah. I like those guys. And if you're here training with us and then you go and you try their class, you're inevitably going to go with whoever is a better fit anyways.
Yeah, right.
And so I'm confident that my team will attract the right people.
Right.
That way I don't feel like I try and trap people.
100%.
You go check that gym out. And if it's better suited for you, cool.
100%. Just like we were talking about earlier, you got to find the right fit for you. You know?
Yeah. And so, and I've actually, I don't do contracts because of that. And I know, like, from a business standpoint, sometimes that makes sense. But there's a part of me that's like, man, if someone wants to leave, goodbye.
Yeah. I'm the same mindset that you are. I don't do a contract per se. It's just an ongoing agreement.
That's what we do too.
I just ask them, if you ever want to leave, just give me 60 days notice. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care whatever you want to leave for. Like, if you want to leave in 6 months, 8 months, 3 years, like, hey man, I'm just done training. Just let me know. Yeah.
That's what I tell people all the time is like, jiu-jitsu is going to be part of my life forever. But I'm also realistic enough to know, like, jiu-jitsu is going to be a part of a lot of people's lives.
Right.
And so I want them to come into jiu-jitsu, and then if they want to transition out of jiu-jitsu, all that should be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. They shouldn't hate it and not want to come back to it. You know what I mean?
And if you read reviews on Yelp and Google of gyms, one of the biggest reoccurring complaints is, I've tried to cancel my contract and they keep auto drafting my payment for months and months and months.
They won't let me out of my contract. They won't this. Yeah.
So, like, I want to make sure that I don't ever have anybody because, dude, it only takes a couple people that are upset with your business before fucking word starts to get around, you know?
Try to keep a good environment,
One thing, I did have one negative Yelp review where it's like, he doesn't have any of the kids in masks. And then that actually attracted more people, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's like, I'll leave that review there. I won't fight that one too much.
I won't contest that.
I won't fight that one too much.
So did you end up getting your black belt from Renzo then?
I got my black belt from Carlos Gracie Jr. in 2011 after I won the Pan Ams. And it was kind of through Tusa, though. It was at the instructors meeting at the main Gracie Baja Academy down in Irvine. And they were doing promotions, and Carlos Gracie Jr. promoted me. But, Tusa was right
awesome.
there, too.
Yeah.
But it was cool that, like, Carlos Gracie Jr. himself.
Legit lineage.
Is the one that gave it to me. And then Drac Calino gave me my first and second degrees, and then Renzo gave me my third, so.
Okay. So, did you just get your third recently then?
It was like a year ago or something like that.
Got it. Yes, like right when I got my second, they shifted the rules to where you have to be a third to give black belts now.
Yeah. Well, you have to be a third to give a black belt to an interim black belt, I think is what it is.
I don't understand what that means.
An interim black belt is a black belt that had not previously been registered with the IBJJF. But if you're a second degree black belt, I believe, and you've had a regular person that's eligible for promotion to black belt that's not an interim black belt, what an interim black belt means is they have to keep with the same instructor for 2 years. They can't change.
Got it.
Which is weird for me too. So how are you telling me that I can't move or change? What if I get in a disagreement with you?
Yeah.
What if you're a terrible human being and you steal something from me, you burn my fucking car down?
Yeah.
Sorry, man, I got to stay affiliated with you for 2 more fucking years or another year and 6 months. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm sure that they could get around it. But back to my story, the intern black belt's one that they couldn't verify the lineage underneath, like his timeline. And so they make you stay a black belt under that person for 2 years, and it has to be a third degree that promotes that person. But a second degree black belt can promote any regular traditional black belt. I think it's only that circumstance when it's a brown belt that hasn't had that like timeline established through the registration process in the IBJJF, and they turn them into an interim black belt.
Okay.
So I think that's all it is.
I'm going to have to go through
because
some of the IBJJF meetings and courses to understand all this shit.
I had that same discussion too. I was like, how is it that yesterday I could promote black belts, but today I can't?
Yeah.
I'm like, tell me how that's possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky enough that Joao isn't only my jiu-jitsu professor. He's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And so
man,
he blesses off on whatever if I tell him, hey, this guy's legit, roger that. So his name's on the certificate. So as far as officially making it recognized with IBJJF or whatever, but
I told Seth, I'm like, he's going to fuck you up. You keep fucking up his name.
Yeah, Chihuahua.
Yeah, I'm like, Seth.
Yeah, well, what else?
I
else did he call him?
I didn't even message him. I called him one day. I'm like, listen, you need to listen right now.
Joao.
You need to stop fucking up his name, spell it right, and say it right. He's like, what am I doing? I'm like, you're putting a bunch of different fucking letters in there, and I'm like, you need to focus and fucking pay attention to what you're doing. He's like, okay.
Man, everybody fucks Joao.
I know, like, but Joao, I'm like,
he introduces himself as Joe sometimes.
I know, but the thing about it is, I'm like, dude, you're
hosting.
You're hosting this dude who is an exceptional guy that you need to be saying the right things.
Yeah.
And after I kind of broke it down to him, because I would joke with him, like, Seth, stop doing that. He'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. And then he would do it again. I'm like, my bad. And then finally, I was like, hey, listen, like, no, you can't do that anymore. He's like, okay, I'll pay attention.
Man, I'm glad we got to do that, having Bushesha and Joao, everyone up at the ranch, and what a cool event.
Yeah, they did that the first annual memorial seminar, and I think they're going to try to keep doing it up there. I know you and I talked about it a little bit.
I missed the last one. Were you at that last one then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I bought a couple shirts from Jen, but that was the extent of it.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to do, like every year, we're going to try to do something up there between Cascal, those guys.
James Weed. Yeah, they're good guys. I like that team.
And those guys. I just talked to James the other day, as a matter of fact. He messaged me because he had a new affiliate up there that wanted to get involved with the We Defy Foundation, so I tried to help him out a little bit with that.
So you're still involved with that then, huh?
I am. I'm like since I was a previous president, and I'm all about helping veterans do things. I mean, I was involved with Mission 22 for forever, and then and I still really support that organization. And then We Defy Foundation from basically the beginning of that one too. But any legitimate veterans organization that's trying to take the physical fitness, mental health, and safety of veterans into like what they do, like I'm all about supporting them.
Well, why don't you unpack like what We Defy is then for people that aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, so the We Defy Foundation is specific to Jiu Jitsu. They use Jiu Jitsu as a vehicle to train disabled combat veterans. They don't have to be disabled through combat. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a combat disabled veteran or disabled. Let me go back. Start this over for me because I'm fucking this up. Anyway, the We Defy Foundation is a 501(c) nonprofit organization that takes veterans that are combat disabled veterans that are at least, I believe it is 80% now. They may have changed it since I haven't been a president since a year, 2 years from now. But I think it's 80% is what it is now. The disability, and they will pay for their jiu-jitsu for a year, 6 months at a time, and provide them with Ghees. There are certified training facilities that have to apply and meet certain criteria in order to train veterans. A veteran could apply and be turned down if it's not the right fit, so we don't force these academies to train them. Mm-hmm. There are many different academies around, so it's not like a one spot for all of them. But what happens is a veteran would apply through the We Defy Foundation. They send in their application. If they already have an academy that they would like to train at, that is one of those, then once the approved application is done and verification of their documents and their disability, then they get put on a waiting list. And it used to be the waiting list was significant, but the fundraising efforts of Travis Larson and the current team at the We Defy Foundation has made great strides. In fact, they've even got a grant from the VA to be able to use VA money to be able to do that now too. So that's a new development in the last like 6 months that Travis has worked on with that. And so anyway, the main person that they're looking for is somebody that's never ever trained jiu-jitsu ever in their life.
Yeah.
They don't need somebody that's a brown belt, that's a purple belt, that's a black belt, that's trained jiu-jitsu. It's like jiu-jitsu is the best thing ever. Like, yeah. We know it.
You already bought off on it.
Yeah, we know. We know that. Let's go find somebody that doesn't know that and bring them in here and give them zero reason to not be able to train.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay for your tuition. I'm going to pay for your gi or any other equipment. If you have a a specific, unique situation where you can't get involved in group classes and you have to start with individual classes and private lessons on a case-by-case basis, they even do that too. Hi, River. They even do that too. And so the veteran applies, it gets vetted, which isn't a huge vetting process. Just make sure that they're qualified for the program because it is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. And so then the once they're approved, they get put on a waiting list. And as soon as they meet the top of that waiting list, it used to be we would get 1 to 2 veterans a month that we would be able to qualify to start training. Then it became 5. Now I think they're up to 10 veterans a month that they're placing in jiu-jitsu academies to start their training. So basically 120 people a year are getting to start jiu-jitsu through the We Defy Foundation.
That's awesome.
And it's all privately donation funded through either donations, grants through the VA or other federal organizations, which VA is the main one that they use, I believe, or through like fundraising events like galas. I used to travel. How this whole thing ended up getting started was I used to travel with the We Defy or Mission 22 at the beginning, at least 1 time a month, sometimes 2, but we would travel around the country doing fundraising seminars to raise awareness for veteran suicide. And we would raise money for Mission 22 in awareness for veteran suicide. And then it eventually got to the point where they were able to start sending them to treatment and stuff. And then I skipped over to the We Defy Foundation because their effort was designed specifically for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like we're going to use the vehicle of jiu-jitsu to help treat these people. Whereas Mission 22 was using jiu-jitsu a little bit, but a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
And I just kind of focused my effort more on jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I was using jiu-jitsu
guy.
I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I was using jiu-jitsu to raise money, and now I want to use jiu-jitsu to raise money and put it right back into jiu-jitsu. So then we switched over to the We Defy Foundation and like our main effort there. So then we started doing that 1 to 2 times a month, trying to raise money. And that was our primary, like literally when I would travel around and conduct seminars, that was our primary means to fund scholarships for veterans. And each one takes about $2,500 a year. So literally in my mind, as I'm conducting seminars, as I would get to $2,500, I'd be like, boom, there's one more veteran.
Yeah.
Pack it over there.
That's
like,
cool.
Let's do the next one. 2,500. Boom, there's one more veteran. So like literally I would just like mark it on the list. Every 2,500, boom, another veteran. 25 from boom, another veteran. And I would just like climb that tree just like that. You know what I mean?
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
What do I have to do as a business owner to be recognized as one of their affiliates?
You would get onto the WeDefyFoundation.org site, and there is a link on there. It should say Become an Academy. Let's look it up real quick, and I'll tell you exactly.
Okay.
But it should say Become a certified training facility. There's an application that has to be filled out. TJ is the one that works all of that. And I think it used to be a paper PDF one that they would like hand jam, but I think he's even automated it now. So usually what I do is if I've got a person that's interested, I would get your contact information, because what I do now is basically I'm a ambassador for them.
Okay.
I go out and talk to people about what their program does, just like this right here. I've got pretty good idea on how it works. I mean, specifics of an exact amount here or there, I always refer to go look at the website. When I was there, this is how it was.
Yeah.
But I know they've got updated stuff, so go research that. But
well, this is a good thing to talk about, because I know a lot of the listeners are military veterans, and I get a lot of people reaching out to me that are interested in starting.
Yeah, there are hundreds of places that they could go train around the United States for free if they qualify for it. And it's not a difficult qualification process. Like, you do not have a bad conduct discharge. You're at this amount of disability. It like basically those are you're not a felon or a thing that's going to get a person in danger.
You don't touch little kids.
Yeah, you don't touch little kids. But once you meet that criteria, like, you're good for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you would go to the WeDefineFoundation.org website. On that, there's that donate now button. And then on the right-hand side, there's that like little drop down. And if you click on that drop down, it should say apply for a scholarship. We find location, training facility, ambassador opportunity. So you would click on that one.
Okay.
And what that is it's two things on that one: the training facilities and then the ambassadors. Ambassadors are ones just kind of like me right now, going out and talk to people, trying to find other people that aren't training jiu-jitsu through this program to apply for it. And if they apply for it, they're probably going to be able to take advantage of it. So it talks about the seminars. There's a one thing that people can do is shop and wear patches on their gis to bring awareness to the foundation, wear t-shirts, things like that. There are a lot of people out there that are competing doing that, but we don't do a lot of seminars anymore. I used to travel around, like I said, 1-2 times a month all over the United States doing seminars, but we've really kind of, they've really kind of cut that back to like 2 to 4 that they try to do a year, and more big seminars than like littler ones, because their fundraising effort is a lot bigger now. Those little ones, although they are helpful and they bring awareness, the thing that maximizes the most use of the money is towards scholarships. So,
well, cool, man. I appreciate that. I'm sure some people will be reaching out from listening to this. Like, that's one of the most common emails that I get from podcast listeners is inquiring about starting jiu-jitsu, or people that just have listened to me talk about jiu-jitsu and they start it and they try it, and just like we already said,
100%.
Now they're hooked. I've even got emails from people's wives that they're like, my husband listens to your show and he started training jiu-jitsu.
It's the best thing ever.
It's the best thing ever. Yep. He's better with the kids. Our relationship is better. Like, I'm telling you, if you're on the fence and you're listening to us,
I don't know why you'd be on the fence, but
people
if you
are,
were,
man. I hear it all the time. People are like, man,
what do you think the reason for that is?
I think, especially, later in life, I think a lot of people are intimidated of seeing how incapable they are.
Yes.
A lot of men, I mean, there was that meme, I think Joe Rogan posted, it's like most men think they're 4,000% better at fighting than they actually are. And when you're new to jiu-jitsu, that understanding of how incapable that you really are, it hits you kind of hard. And that's something you have to fight through that. And I just don't think that that's something that a lot of people are willing to come to terms with.
100%.
You know? And the ironic thing is coming to terms with that is going to be so beneficial to you.
That goes back to the original thing we talked about with the confidence building, at the very beginning. I think if a lot of people realized that most of the places that you're going to train jiu-jitsu, especially if they're, I say legitimate, but how is a person going to know if it's legitimate or not? Even through a website or a whatever Google ads, people could appear to be legitimate. You know what I mean? But any true legitimate program, the main emphasis is on student safety. And I think that intimidation thing is number one. Like, they don't want to see themselves be bad at something, especially as an adult. But two, I think they don't really know what the environment is going to be like. And they're not sure if they're going to be safe or if they're going to get injured or like what the hell is going on out there. You know what I mean? And I think that...
Or people are just going to use it as an opportunity. Oh, fresh meat. Let's kick this guy's ass.
And I mean, every once in a while we'll joke around about it like that. But most of the time, like, if you've got somebody that's got that philosophy, fresh meat, let's get it, put him in the grinder. It's like, no, man, like, we can't do that. Like, we want to put somebody in the grinder. Let's put you in the grinder. Let's go train.
No, and I feel like, I mean, I found a good balance at my academy because I do got that core group of 22-year-olds that want every round to be to the death. Right. And I love that. And I love those kids. But the when you set the proper tone of the academy, those guys can train with your 40-year-old moms that just signed up last week that are now learning jiu-jitsu. And a big part of having a successful academy is having your students know how to be good training partners.
Yeah. And that 40-year-old mom goes, I love that guy. I train
exactly
with
right.
him and he's the best. I'm like, that little dude's a savage.
I got this young kid named Zach, and he's been with me probably a year and a half. He's still a white belt. He's getting very good though. But he will slap and bump with small children, moms, brand new people, injured people, and he turns the dial up perfectly.
Yeah.
And then he'll slap and bump with the killers and just go get after it too. Yeah. And I tell people, I'm like, you see that? He manages his output based on who his training partner is.
100%.
Every one of us should be trying to do that.
At the window, everybody coming looking and waving.
We've been at it for an hour and a half almost.
That's been good.
Probably time to wrap this up. Is there anything else that you would like to put out, or anything about like your academy, where to find you, or any of that
I'm in Houston. I've got a few of these, but my main academy is here in Houston, Renzo Gracie Houston. People can come down here and train anytime they want to. I mean, I've got probably the largest open mat in the United States, and I say that jokingly, but like it probably is. Like, if you were here are you gonna be here on Sunday?
I'm flying out Sunday morning.
I was going to say, ask Andy about it. He'll tell you.
Yeah.
If you ask anybody about the open mat here on Sunday, I literally, no bullshit, for the past probably 4 months, have had 100 people here on Sunday.
Wow.
10 to 12, 15 different black belts from 10 to 12 different academies every Sunday. And it's chill. We put on gangster rap, turn on the fans, start the timer, and have a great time.
How good is that for the jiu-jitsu community?
It's great.
Yeah.
We bullshit, we train, we have fun, listen to music. And then what I'm trying to do is this thing is called Jiu Jitsu, like expand jiu-jitsu in the city. I've taken this open mat and I'm trying to make it like a community outdoor open mat. I've done some things called brew jitsu as well, where the purpose of that is two things: community jiu-jitsu, but to raise money for a nonprofit, either military or law enforcement. I go to a local microbrew that has space where I can put out mats. I've got like 40 by 40 worth of mats or something like that. And crazy, but mats that I put out at a microbrew. The deal is $20. You get to train for 2 hours. Just open mat, music. Sometimes I have a taco truck, whatever. But 2 hours, $20. 2 beers, if you're old enough. So you pay $20, and you get 2 beers, and you get to train jiu-jitsu. $5 of that goes to the microbrew. 15 of that goes to the nonprofit. So I've been doing that a little bit too.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
what kind of people are showing up at that?
Dude, the first one had 300 people at it.
Are you serious?
No bullshit. Eighth Wonder Brewery, like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, had 300 people. The second one, Renzo was at, and we had almost that amount of people.
Wow.
No bullshit. I'll show you the picture.
That's cool.
No
man.
bullshit. 300 people. It was fucking crazy.
That's cool, dude.
Yeah.
Using jiu-jitsu for in a bunch of different realms.
Yeah.
You know?
And a lot of them, like, again, back to funneling to helping veterans, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate your time. I know I sprung this on you last minute yesterday, but I appreciate you inviting me to your academy.
I appreciate you too, man. I was hoping we would get to train, but I know you got some stuff going on. But you're like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can we make this happen? I'm like, yeah, man, we'll make it happen one way or the other. So
all right,
I appreciate it, man.
Cool, man. And next time you're up in Coeur d'Alene,
for sure.
As soon as you know dates, let me know, and I'll put that on my calendar.
I know they want me back out there, but I for sure will.
Cool, man. All right, thank you.
Thank you.